Tony Khan is making major changes to AEW ROH. Plus, we're going to be talking about some massive news surrounding AJ Lee returning to the WWE, plus so much more. It's all coming up right here on The Ango Show. Yes. I hope everybody's having a fantastic weekend. I was very shocked by the news of Joe Hendry, so let's talk about it. Joe Hendry made his WWE NXT live show debut. Yeah, that's right. This wasn't televised, and the partnership has now creeped into the live events. And this is actually really sweet. There was a 6-man tag match with Joe Hendry, Shiloh, and Javon Evans, and they unfortunately lost to Gallus. But this is really cool. A lot of fans in attendance were posting photos on social media, and obviously this is like the first time that has ever happened in WWE that I can recall, at least in the history that I've been alive and like actually watching. I don't recall a time where a non-contracted WWE star was working WWE live events. I'm not saying it hasn't happened. I'm sure it has, but in my lifetime that I've been watching, I've never seen anything like this, and it's actually really dope. I think it's really cool for Joe Hendry. It's great because, you know, part of his thing is that he could show up anytime, anywhere, any place. I think it's really cool for TNA because they're getting the benefit, you know, when they're doing these live events in Florida for WWE. You know, these are people who, you know, they pay tickets and they're watching these up and comers basically get their practice matches in. That's how I look at these live events. It's like, hey, put up some new faces, give them an opportunity to show what they can do, try some different stuff with characters. This stuff isn't on TV. But for TNA, it benefits them because now people are talking about Joe Hendry being at the event, and it kind of makes you think, hey, I should probably go to an event at some point. Like, you literally never know what can happen. And I think when it's unpredictable like that, that's what makes wrestling fun. Quite honestly, that is exactly what makes wrestling fun. We are living in a whole different era with WWE. This is the stuff that WWE doesn't do. And, you know, a lot of people are saying, well, how does this benefit TNA? I mean, look at the TNA numbers, right? Like Slammiversary had over 4,000 people in attendance. This is a smaller company. This is a company who hasn't done that in over 10 years. And I'm not saying it's just all because of WWE, but what I am saying is that there is a renewed interest in the TNA product, and that's a good thing. And, you know, Joe Hendry is the guy who's constantly going viral. So when it's Joe Hendry representing TNA, I think that's a great thing. What I would really love to see, though, and I don't know if this is maybe just asking for too much, but I would actually like to see Joe Hendry like actually involved in like WWE like championship matches and stuff. Like, I want to see him hold a belt. I want to see him represent TNA holding the belt. I want to see him eventually go to the main roster while still being able to work TNA. Like, that would be super dope if that were to happen. So yeah, Joe Hendry pulling up at a WWE NXT live event. You never know what happens, but if you say his name, he will appear. Guys, a couple of months ago, we spoke about this report from Slice Wrestling that came out, and it was essentially just talking about AJ Lee and Roxanne Perez being planned for WrestleMania 41 in Las Vegas, which obviously that would be a massive singles match. We're not dumb. We know that. We know that would be an absolute massive match. There's just too many synergies there for that match to happen. But then what's actually really cool is CM Punk did an interview with Ringside Collectibles at the 2024 San Diego Comic-Con. And he was asked about a return, a possible return for AJ Lee. And he says, I'm the wrong guy to ask those questions about. I know that there's a lot out there of that, but I'm certainly not pushing her to do anything. I think she knows that there's options. I think she sees how happy I am and how things are different. But if the right situation presented itself, it would have to be a discussion between her and certain people. I don't necessarily want to be in the middle of that just because it could kind of get weird. Selfishly, yes, I would love to make out with my wife on television again. You know, it's interesting because I always thought when CM Punk went to AEW, it was like a sure thing that AJ Lee would be there. And I remember talking about it in the Discord server and on live streams. It's just like, it would have made sense. It would have been a really, really massive signing. And there was even talks at one point that it could potentially happen. So when you see something like this going down and you think of the possibilities, I think that's amazing. I think it's genuinely amazing that, like, you just never know what's going to happen. Some people say they retire and they're done for good, and then that's not necessarily the case, right? And then those same people do show up at some point. And I mean, it's crazy because I never thought CM Punk would be back in WWE. I never thought CM Punk would be in AEW. Hell, at one point, I didn't even think there would be an AEW, right? So AJ Lee returning to the WWE would be phenomenal. I think if you do the match with her and Roxanne, that would be great. I know a lot of people would hate the idea of her being part of NXT, but when you look at Cora Jade being out there and Roxanne being out there, like maybe that's something that you even do in NXT. You got the CW network. But of course, AJ Lee has to be working the main roster as well. And just look at how great the women's division is now in 2024. Like women's wrestling has leaps and bounds above anything they've done in the past. And just like the women's roster is so stacked and there's just so many heavy hitters. The matches are great. Storylines are great. There's like an actual focus on women's wrestling. When AJ Lee was wrestling for the WWE at that time, that really wasn't the case. I mean, it was really just her and Paige holding things down. So yeah, I mean, if AJ Lee comes back, I'm super with it. I think it would be really dope. I think it would be really cool to see her have that match with Roxanne, but don't get it twisted. There's a lot of other matches I would love to see. I would love to see her have a storyline with Liv Morgan. I would love to see her have a storyline with Rhea Ripley. There's a lot of really cool potential possibilities there. So it is something to definitely keep in mind. But that leads us to our final topic. Tony Khan, ROH Media Scrum. You may have not known this, but they did have Death Before Dishonor yesterday. Ring of Honor is in a weird situation. It's a very tricky situation for the company because Ring of Honor, just honestly, the visibility of it is very little. I did mention this the other day. I feel like there has been a renewed focus on it. But I just think with ROH and the way it's being distributed, there's a ton of issues with it. Tony Khan doesn't seem to disagree because it sounds like Tony Khan understands that change needs to happen. So on the possibility of more cohesion between AEW and ROH, he says it's really interesting what the promotion has grown into, but I'm really proud of it. I think ROH holds an important place. I recognize that AEW is at the very top of pro wrestling, and the ROH brand could frankly benefit from even more association. I don't think it's out of the question to say or sacrilegious to say. I think it would only help grow the ROH brand if I were to license it or sub-license it if it were AEW ROH. Interesting. He says, I don't think that's crazy or sacrilegious or bad. I think it would be good for everybody. People would see more of the connectivity that exists between the promotions and what we're going for. Okay, I'm going to talk about that for a second. Rebranding Ring of Honor to AEW ROH is actually a good idea. 1000%. From a business perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And also having more synergy between the two makes a lot of sense. I want to see them literally just copy WWE. Like, this is one of those scenarios. I've been saying it since day one, since Tony Khan bought ROH. I want to see them copy WWE. Let your underutilized talent go to Ring of Honor. And then when they're ready for Dynamite and Collision and Rampage, you call them up. Do it just like NXT and the main roster. Just like that. Tony Khan also talks about the possibility of ROH being part of WBD. He says it's not crazy at all to think Ring of Honor could be televised in the Warner Brothers Discovery family. Would Ring of Honor frankly have a lot more value as AEW Ring of Honor? Yeah, probably. I think I've come to that realization as far as the presentation. That might mean a more cohesive absorption of the promotion into the fabric of what we're already doing, but not in a way that would affect things. Yeah, I think that's perfectly well said. And if you do AEW ROH, maybe you just get rid of Rampage. You know what I mean? Let 10 p.m. be that time slot for Ring of Honor. There's rumors that Collision could be moving to Thursdays. Like Dynamite on Wednesdays, Thursdays Collision, Friday Ring AEW ROH, right? Like that could work. That could work. It would be the right move. I think it's a great idea. I think as long as you actually have a system in place for call-ups and stuff like that, I just think it makes a lot of sense. So that's personally what I would like to see. I think Tony Khan gets it. We'll see what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for this change? Let me know. Thank you for watching The Ango Show.